Welcome back to another Warframe video, guys. Very soon after saying I was not going to release one until after Christmas, but I saw someone put in the comments section on my last video that they would like to see the builds that I used during my 2024 playthrough, so I thought that wouldn't take very long. So I'm just going to run through them today, where we used them, when we got them, and yeah, they're nothing special. I just want to point out these builds, we never even min-maxed them, you know, we got them to the point where they could do what we needed them to, and then we kind of just left them and didn't really upgrade them anymore. So it might be a bit underwhelming, but I thought just for kind of, you know, showing exactly what we used throughout the series in one video might be useful to some people. So yeah, let's get on with it. All right, so unfortunately I can't go back and get some of the frames that I've already put into the Helminth, so I'm just going to run through the ones that I can. We did not have Rhino Prime towards the start of this playthrough, but we did get the normal Rhino, so I'm going to kind of just illustrate what we did when we got Rhino. When we started this playthrough, the first frame that we got, our beginner frame, was Mag. Now we used Mag to basically get us over to Fossa and farm us up Rhino, and once we had Rhino, we didn't really touch Mag a whole lot, to be honest. I mean, maybe just for assassination missions, but yeah, really Mag only played a part in getting us to Rhino. So on the Rhino, we literally used a build like this. This was the only things that we had on our Rhino, really, and we used this to sort of jumpstart our Warframe progression and get us all of the other frames that we needed. So I just thought I'd show this. The only other thing that we had alongside this, which unfortunately I have also sold off, is the Vectis. So the normal Vectis we got. And on this, we had a very similar build to actually what I currently have on the Rubico Prime. So I'll quickly show that. This is basically what I was building towards on the Vectis. I didn't use any Former on the Vectis, so there were a few mods missing. Things such as, you know, Vile Acceleration, Vigilante Armaments. They might not have been on the build simply because we didn't have enough room, and then also Primary Deadhead we wouldn't have had either. It was a very basic build, and we essentially used this build to get us through Index, get us a load of credits, and yeah, push us towards the more higher end gear and being able to trade and gain platinum and all that good stuff, and level up our mods. Credits being very important for doing that. As you can see, at the end of our series, we did invest heavily in leveling up mods for sale. And we now have basically no credits and no platinum, so that's all very fun. So yeah, that was the kind of first iteration of our build that we used. So after Rhino, there were a few frames that we looked to invest in. One of those was Titania. Now I have two builds for Titania. One is the Titania damage build. This essentially has taken Thermal Sunder to wipe enemies. That's why it's Titania damage. We use this to go through exterminate missions, clearing them incredibly quickly. Really good as well for doing void fissures, opening up relics. That's essentially what we aimed for to begin with, is just a way to do that quickly and clear out nodes very quickly as well. You can see I do have 5 Crimson Archon shards on here. Now we didn't have these to begin with, but as we gathered them, we just stuck them on in order to improve the damage that Thermal Sunder can output. This build can basically wipe all of the nodes on the normal star chart, which made clearing them very easy for us early on. And if we just take a look at the build here, you can see we've got Steel Charge on just to ramp up our capacity as high as possible. We've also got Arcane Nullifier and Arcane Energize on now, although we did not have these to begin with, and I actually bought the remainder of the Arcane Energizers that I needed after the event came out. Or did I buy them? Well, I did buy them, but in the event. I didn't buy them for platinum. So when the event came around last year, what was it, Jade Light, we were able to buy Arcane Energizers, which usually comes around once a year now. So yeah, wasn't really worth us doing Eidolon hunting in this playthrough, and hence we haven't really delved into Eidolon hunting that much this time around. But this is the basic build. Archon Vitality obviously stacks quite well with Thermal Sunder. It applies another stack of heat. Razorwing Blitz for increased speed. Prime Continuity and Primed Flow, just to make sure we have a nice energy pool, and preparation obviously, so we start with a nice energy pool at the beginning of the mission. Now some of you may be wondering why I don't have a melee or a secondary equipped. The reason for this is that when you come to do void fissures and you're opening relics, this will essentially allow you to guarantee the void buff. So once you've collected 10 void traces, or is it void traces? Yeah, once you've collected 10 void traces, you will get the buff on your Titania guaranteed if you're not running a primary or a secondary, which obviously means that your Thermal Sunder, the damage is doubled and the range is doubled. So it's a very useful thing to know. if you are running a Thermal Sunder Titania build, or really any Titania clear build, you know, if you're using Nova's Null Star or whatever it is, then it's also useful as well. Doesn't matter what melee you run at all. And then also, yeah, if you want to rank up Madurai for a bit of extra damage on top of that, then that's pretty good as well. Okay, so the other Titania build that we use has Eclipse on rather than Thermal Sunder. This is basically just for capture missions and assassination missions. Anything really that doesn't require killing enemies, so Spy it's also pretty good for. This has a bit of an increased strength value, as well as efficiency, and 0 range, because we don't need it for this build. So this allows us to travel much, much faster through missions, and it will allow us to also improve the damage greatly on our Dex Pixia. If you just take a look here, I haven't really got a great build on the Dex Pixia. I use whatever faction mod that I need to, and then I've just thrown on Viral on there now, although obviously things have changed a bit recently, so yeah, we'll need to look into this a bit more. And obviously you can invest into this a lot and make it way, way, way better. We've got Barrel Diffusion and Lethal Torrent for multi-shot, obviously. It's quite a good status chance, the Dex Pixie, so I'd recommend trying to use the 60/60 mods if you can. And yeah, that's pretty much what I'm going to say about that. That's all we ever got to on Titania. So yeah, in conjunction with this, if we were doing something on Steel Path, for example, or, you know, a higher level mission, we'd also be running our trusty pole. For those of you who don't know what the pole is, and I have been asked quite a lot, this is Zor. We built this pretty early on, actually, in the game at Cetus. It's made of the Stung Grip, the Radvi Strike, and the Vargeet 2 Ruhang Link. That's for maximum crit and damage. Essentially, all this is used for is Exodia Contagion. This does mad damage. I know people, you know, say, oh, there's way better things out there, and there are. But in terms of actually getting something that does stupid damage early on in the game, it is a really, really good item to get. So I would still actually recommend trying to get this early on if you can. It is a bit of platinum that you need to invest in it, but it's a simple, quick fix. And it can get you through Steel Path comfortably still. So yeah, this is essentially what we'd do. We'd use Titania to get us to whatever target we needed to get to, and then we can just use our Exodia Contagion to wipe out the target on Steel Path. We didn't need massively leveled up Dex Pixia or Divata Primes. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm not going to go into primary or secondary builds because I genuinely did not use them that much. The only one that I would have used at all is the Zenith, and we'll come to that in a second when we get on to our Vault build. But yeah, the build for Titania on this, like I said, it just swaps out for Eclipse, and then yeah, we've you know, we've not even got a maxed vitality on here. That's how bad this is. A very similar build to the one, except for we're using Transient Fortitude, Narrow-Minded. No overextended or anything like that. So yeah, that's the build, the other build for Titania that I use. Okay, so moving on now past Titania, there are 3 frames which we got our hands on in order to boost our progress. That being Banshee, Chroma, and Khora. So starting with Banshee, we use Banshee for getting ourselves focus. Banshee is one of the best early game focus farming frames you can get. You may notice as well that all of the ones that I'm showing you right now are primes. I find it way easier to get some of these frames in their primed form than in their normal form. You can just buy and trade the parts with platinum, which you can farm opening relics. So, you know, in terms of actually saving time and ending up with the better variant of the frame anyway, it's always a good idea, I think, to just aim for the prime variants of each frame rather than trying to get the normal variant and then inevitably getting the prime variant later on. So for our Banshee, we do have Gloom subsumed on here. So we farmed up Sevagoth and got his ability and put him on Banshee. That allows us to slow down enemies and make the most out of the reeling animation that Silence provides, that you can see in the helpful little tooltip below. This essentially allows us to get loads and loads and loads of stealth kills consecutively without having to worry. And you can use whatever you want in terms of arcanes on here. Energize is obviously useful for keeping your energy pool nice and high. And I would recommend running Preparation and Prime Flow just so you start with max energy and then you don't really have to worry. And we'd go on Sedna each day and max out our focus standing for whatever we, you know, wanted to get. So yeah, another really useful build. Combine that as well if you want to with Narraman. So on the Narraman skill tree, you have Affinity Spike, which grants you an additional 45% more melee affinity. So if you had this on and you also had Exodia Contagion on the pole, whoops. then you can get yourself a ton of focus very, very quickly without an affinity booster. So yeah, that's the Banshee build. If we just take a quick look now at the Chroma build, so we got this primarily for farming credits early on, actually. But one thing that a lot of people don't know is that the pole with Exodia Contagion actually works multiplicatively with Chroma's Vex Armor. So as many of you know, Chroma's Vex Armor is an additive damage bonus, as in it applies damage before mods. Similarly to how Serration works, you know, you just put it on and it gives you extra damage. It does not multiply your overall damage output. It used to, it doesn't anymore. But the exception to this is Exodia Contagion, which is still affected by Chroma's Vex Armor being multiplicative. So this does absolutely insane damage on Steel Path. And yeah, we use this basically to carry us through any of the harder missions. Chroma is really, really tanky. We don't even have, oh, we do actually, but just casting speed, I think, and parkour velocity to get us through missions. We did use this build for Netracells early on, solo Netracells. Makes life very, very easy. So yeah, again, another really, really nice build, and it's also, like I said, we used it to get credits, loads and loads of credits. It's a great profit taker frame. If we just take a quick look at the build here, you can see very high strength. Range, not important for this build whatsoever. You can dump it. And enough duration to obviously, yeah, keep Vex Armor up for quite a while. I've also subsumed Smite on. This was primarily for Profit Taker so that we could get an additional element on our weapons. And yeah, that's pretty much all you need to say about this, to be honest. We do have an Umbral Former on here, which we put on a bit later on. But yeah, it's really just a high damage build and very tanky, which is, you know, why it's good. So yeah, again, not a min-max build, but a very good build for us early on, carrying us through the very high level missions with just Chroma and Exodia Contagion. So that was really good. And then the last frame that I wanted to just show out of those is obviously Khora Farm. The Khora farming build was very, very useful to us throughout the playthrough, and we got it very early on, relatively speaking, with Pilfering Strangledome and also accumulating Whipclaw. Can allow you to farm up materials, no problem at all, on solo on Steel Path. And we used our pole again, except this time with a different build, which you can see here. So we've got Weeping Wounds and Blood Rush on right here. We also have the Riven mod right here, which we didn't have to begin with, and you can do this quite easily without a Riven mod. But R1 gave us crit damage and crit chance and additional combo duration, so it was an obvious choice to have this on rather than off. And melee exposure as well, which we gradually built up over time. We still haven't maxed it out, but that grants us a bit of extra corrosive damage when we're using our whip. So yeah, that's pretty much all we need to say about this. Arcane Fury, again, you know, if you've got it, great, throw it on, doesn't really matter. We also still have Master's Summons on this, and we've had it, you know, since we got Khora, which was well before the changes to companions came through. I would probably take this off now and put something else on. I haven't really considered what else to put on, but, you know, it's worth thinking about. The other weapons you put on here don't really matter at all. And then what I would say as well, now that we've got the new companion changes in, and we can get stuff like a Resourceful Retriever, definitely worth putting on for a farming frame. Retrieve on Chesser also helps to gain additional loot because it can scavenge it from enemies. There's so many options now for farming using different companions, so it's really nice actually, I found at least. And yeah, that's pretty much all we're going to say about that. In terms of companions, actually, while we're over here, we did get our Smeetakivat very early on as well. Where's Jeff? When we got Jeff, as I've already alluded to, the companion changes hadn't come in, so the Smeetakivat was really the only viable loot farming companion that you could get, because Charm used to provide double resource drops occasionally. Now, though, it just provides an affinity bonus. It's a higher affinity bonus than it was before, but it's just an affinity bonus nonetheless. So Jeff actually now, probably, you know, if I did another playthrough, the Smeeta would come in when we come to level up weapons and do all of that stuff, because the triple affinity buff that you get from it is actually very good at speeding that part of the game up, and I'm sure it will improve people's sort of progression through the game and how fast they can do it. So yeah, that was really nice as well. Which brings us on to the final frame, which I want to show you guys. So as with most playthroughs, the frame that I tend to invest the most time into is Vault, or Vault Prime. We didn't start with the Vault in this playthrough because I started with Vault in my last playthrough that I did a YouTube series for, and I wanted to do something different, but I would always start with Vault in a playthrough. I'm not going to go into the reasons why in this video. I'm sure I've gone into them before in a previous video, but yeah. Vault, to me, is a very, very, very versatile frame. Very good at speed, very good at damage, and actually can also be very good at tankiness and sustain. So you can see we've built for Eidolon hunting only, essentially, in this particular playthrough, although we gave up on that quite early on, to be honest, because of the event and the fact that Eidolon hunting, other than getting focus quite quickly, was just not viable for platinum income, which is what I usually use Eidolon hunting for, is platinum income. So yeah, we kind of fell out of favour with Vault Prime in this series because we couldn't Eidolon hunt with him, and that's what we built him for, really. So you can see here we've got 4 Tau Forged Violet shards on in the end with increased electricity damage, and we've got 1 Tau Forged Crimson for extra ability strength. If we take a look at the build right here, we're running Arcane Acceleration, but you know, it's not really that important, and Arcane Rage as well, also not that important. Dreamer's Bond, again, not that important. It's really, I could have kept going with this build, but yeah, since the Eidolon hunting kind of died down a bit, I stopped looking at it a lot. But we do have a triple Umbral setup right here, even though Umbral Fiber isn't maxed out. And then maximum damage and strength and duration, along with Eclipse. The reason we've dumped all of our efficiency is because we got access to energy pads. So we didn't really need a whole lot of efficiency because we could craft tons and tons of energy pads. And yeah, we can just max out our strength using Blind Rage then. So yeah, that's that. And then the Zenith, which we used alongside Vault, we do have this Riven mod for crit damage, heat, and multi-shot, which was actually a pretty good one. This happily one-shots the limbs for us, and then everything else is kind of built into attack speed. So we've got Violet Acceleration on heavy caliber for extra damage, split chamber, serration, you know, all the good stuff on here. I don't know if I did do a different build at one point. I know I've changed this around a lot, to be honest, and I was actually using this to cap the Eidolon as well, hence we've got primary Deadhead on here, but our crit chance is over the 100% mark, obviously, and we've got a crit multiplier of 8.5 times, which is nice. Elsewhere, we never got around to getting the Vermisplicer build going on this account. Again, because we fell out of favour with Eidolon hunting, it didn't really make sense to invest in it. And then the Vastilok, we've just got Fury, Shattering Impact for stripping armor on Eidolons, and Gladiator Vice. Now, what you can do with this build, if you wanted, would be to run the pole, for example, and you could speedrun Steel Path missions with this, probably a bit faster than Chroma. You'd be a bit more squishy, but you could get through Steel Path missions using the pole and Exodia Contagion on this build as well. It'll be just as good. I should have pointed out that we have put Eclipse on our 4th ability for some extra damage. We do also have a couple other Vault builds in our arsenal, so we have a Vault Clear build as well for, you know, clearing minor missions. That's just got range and a ton of strength for wiping out enemies. And then we also have a Vault Speed build as well, although I'm not sure I've looked at this in a while either. Yeah, no range, just quite a bit of strength and duration and efficiency. So similar to the Eidolon build, but with more efficiency and a little less strength. So yeah, that's basically all there is to that. Companion-wise, it doesn't really matter. On our Archwing, we were running Itzal. We didn't ever put an Orokin reactor on this. You can see we've just got like the base stuff on here. We didn't really need anything else at this point. So yeah, really low-level stuff. I guess what this is showing is that you don't need to invest loads and loads of time into builds in order for them to perform well. You can min-max as much as you want, but there's a certain point where it becomes usable, if that makes sense. And you can do things very quickly in the game. And that's the point I try and get across in my videos, is that, you know, you want to get to a certain point, and then if you want to push forward in Warframe, rather than, you know, staying in one spot, trying to max out your build as much as possible, just move forward a bit. You know, once you get it to a certain point, keep moving forward. And then once you're at a point in the game where you think, you know what, actually I'll go back and maybe max these out a bit, then do it. That's what I would suggest. And it's definitely what I've learned playing this game like 4 or 5 times through now. Void Rig we never got around to making a build for, it didn't really matter to us in this playthrough. And that's kind of it for our frames, to be honest. I don't think there was anything else really that we used. If you want to see some of the other builds that I've used in my other playthroughs, I would recommend looking at the series that I did at the end of my last playthrough, where we looked at building frames for Steel Path Circuit. I really enjoyed that, and it will probably give you guys an idea of how I would build some other frames as well. So yeah, before we kind of round this off, I do want to just show you a couple other things as well that we've had to build out. So first of all, I want to go and take a look at the Railjack. So let's just hop down there now. Okay, so our Railjack, which I've gone over quite a few times now, but we'll do it again for this video. Zeki Shield Array Mark III. And for anyone who's particularly wondering, this has got the Railjack damage increased by 25% when shields are depleted. And then Vidar Engines Mark III, boost speed increased by 50% when shields are depleted. And then Vidar Plating Mark III, just massive hull. And then Zeki Reactor Mark III for 50% chance that a fire hazard will repair automatically. And then we've got max 60% battle mod strength and 40% battle mod range on there. In terms of our guns, we're using the Zeki Glazio Mark III, Zeki Photor Mark III, which is manned by one of our crewmates. That will increase the damage that it can do, and also the crewmates are like super accurate, so I find the Photors really nice for them actually. And then Tycho Seeker Mark III to take out shields. Upgrades wise, this is what we're running. 0 Former build. So this is for like max speed on solo, and I guess in duo if you want it as well. So we've got Raider Matrix for increased Archwing speed. And then we've got increased cruising speed, increased boost speed, increased speed, and increased lock-on time, and reload time. And then we've just got Hyper Strike for increased turret damage, and Warhead for increased ordnance damage. And that's basically all we needed for this, to be honest. Battle mods wise, Seeker Volley, obviously, just for massacring all of the fighters, and Shatter Burst is really good as well for taking out the radiators on the objectives. Tactical mods we basically never used, but I did max out Flow Burn for increased speed. Intrinsics, we didn't quite max out 2 of them. We got them to 9. We could have if we focused them a bit more, but to be honest, at that point they didn't provide us with a whole load of extra stuff or affinity, so we just let them be. And then our Uncle Crewmate, our Defender right here, you can see max combat and max endurance, really good. And then if we take a look at the weapon, our Kuva Nukor, we got primed target cracker and primed whatever mod we wanted to put on here. The reason it's primed expel corpus is because I was using the Uncle Crewmate for the Profit Taker. So yeah, that's why that's there. But yeah, nothing special really on this, to be honest. Toxin damage of only 25.1%, really poor one. You could massively improve these builds. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So I'm gonna finish that video there. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the builds that I used throughout this series, because yeah, you know, there weren't many of them. I did stick to the few frames that I got towards the start of the playthrough, because I knew those are the only ones that I would need to get to rank 30. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to leave them down in the comments. And once again, thank you guys so much for all your support throughout this year, and for those of you who followed the Warframe 2024 playthrough series all the way to the end. I applaud your courage for sticking with it, and your persistence. So thank you very much. And yeah, I look forward to getting into all of this stuff again in the next year. It's going to be really interesting, especially with the recent updates to Warframe. So yeah, I'll see you guys later.